From athletes to authors, innovators to icons, we connect with those who help shape the South's culture, revealing the stories of their lives, their journeys, their triumphs and tragedies, what molded them into who they are today. Broadcasting across the Southeast, telling the South stories. This is where their stories live. Authentically off-script and personally illuminating. This is Audibles with Jason Scarborough. This week on Audibles, we bring you an Audibles Encore. This week, Philip Gunn, Part 2.
For those watching that may not be familiar with the framework of government, and they don't often foray into politics or government, and they may not understand all the duties that come with being Speaker of the House, how would you describe that for our viewers?
Well, it's a basic civics lesson, I guess. We have three branches of government. The judicial branch, which is the court system. And there's a federal court system and a state court system. We have a United States Supreme Court and a Mississippi Supreme Court. So I'm also a lawyer, as you know, as we talked about. But there's a hierarchy there in the court systems that interpret the laws. Then we have the executive branch, which is the governor on the state level. It's the president on the national level. It's the mayor of the town on the local level. And then you've got the legislative branch. And in Washington, you've got the House and the Senate. State legislature, you've got House and the Senate. And in the city, you've got what you call your Board of Aldermen or your city council. So those are our three branches of government. In Washington, you have the United States Senate, which is led by the Vice President of the United States. In the Congress, you have the Speaker of the House. Well, that same model is what we use here in Mississippi. In Mississippi, the Lieutenant Governor presides over the Senate, and the Speaker of the House presides over the House. In Mississippi, we perform the exact same functions, and we are paid the exact same amount of money. I tell people all the time, the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker do the exact same thing. There is but one difference. The Speaker of the House is elected by the members of the body, and the Lieutenant Governor is elected by popular vote. So when people go to the polls, they get to vote on the President and the Vice President of the United States, or they get to vote on the Governor and the Lieutenant Governor. They don't get to vote on the Speaker. The members of the body elect the Speaker. So I was honored and privileged in 2012 to be elected by my colleagues to be their Speaker. It's a tremendous honor and tremendous responsibility that comes with that. You have to kind of understand how laws are made. I'm a firm believer that our founding fathers did not want a strong central government. They had just come out of England where they had a king and had one guy, a monarchy, who declared everything. They didn't like that. They recognized the need for government, but they did not want the government to have a great say in their lives, taking away their freedoms. The more government you have, the less freedom that you have. So they created initially a very weak central government. In fact, it wasn't even able to do anything, and they had to come back to the table and create another form of government, which gave the central government a little more authority. But they wanted the power to reside within the states. They wanted the states to be more independent. This is why we have a very difficult process for passing laws, but a very easy process for killing bills, stopping laws from passing. But in our legislature, a bill starts when a legislator comes in with an idea. They draft up the bill. The bill is sent to the Speaker. The Speaker then decides where that bill should go. We have 33 committees in the House. They don't have that many in the Senate, but they got 15 or 20 in the Senate. The Speaker and or the Lieutenant Governor's case may be, assigns that bill to a committee depending on the subject matter. So if it's an education bill, I send it to the Education Committee. If it's a transportation bill, I send it to the Transportation Committee, so on and so forth. The committee then considers the bill. If they like it, they pass it out to the full House for consideration. If it passes the House, then it goes over to the Senate, where it has to go through the committee process again and pass the Senate floor. If they change it in any way, it has to come back over to the House for what we call concurrence or non-concurrence, which means we agree with the changes or we don't. If we agree with the changes, then we send it to the governor. If we don't agree, then they send the bill to conference, and we have to hammer out the differences and come to negotiate and try to come to an agreement. Then the bill goes to the governor. So as you can see, there's a lot of hurdles that a bill has to jump over to become law. It's got to, and if you assign it to two committees, which the Speaker can do, then it's got to go through two committees before it comes out. There's a lot of hurdles that a bill has to get over. But One person can kill a bill by raising a point of order on the House floor. A chairman can kill a bill. If he doesn't like it, he can just stick it in his pocket. The speaker or the lieutenant governor can kill a bill. The governor can veto a bill. So there's a lot of ways to stop a bill from becoming a law, and it's very hard to get a law passed. But as Speaker, it was my responsibility and privilege to name the chairman of the committees. So I got to pick the chairman of education, the chairman of transportation, the chairman of agriculture, so on and so forth. And obviously, as a Republican, I'm going to pick people who share my political views, my values. We talked about this before the break. I want people who are going to implement conservative policies, who are conservative in their understanding of government, and who are going to lean conservative in what they're going to do. So that's the kind of people I'm going to pick to be the chairman of the committees. I also get to assign every member to committees. So every member will have 5 or 6 committees that they serve on. I get to make those decisions as to which committee every member in the House gets to serve on. I also get to decide every committee that a bill is assigned to. So the Speaker and the Lieutenant Governor both have tremendous power in the state of Mississippi. I get to pick the chairman, I get to pick the people who are on the committees, I get to assign the bills to the committees.
How were you able to, you had so many different personalities on both sides of the aisle, so how were you able to balance the diverse interests, personalities, not just within your own party, but on the other side of the aisle?
Well, it's very difficult because in the House, we have 122 members. That's 122 opinions about what we ought to be doing, 122 ideas about what we ought to be doing. And on the other end of the building, you got 52 senators plus a lieutenant governor. That's 53 people over there who also have opinions and ideas about what you're going to be doing. So it is a very difficult thing to do. I have more Republicans in the House than they've even got senators on the other ends of the building. Right now they have 79 Republicans in the House. They've only got 52 total senators down there. So we have more Republicans in the House than we got senators on the other end. That's 79 different opinions about what conservative policy ought to be and which direction we ought to go. I believe the biggest success, the biggest way to handle that is to have relationship with all of them. You've got to spend time getting to know them, letting them get to know you, trusting you that you're not out for some selfish personal gain, but you're trying to do what's best for the state and or best for them. I worked hard to try to just be a friend to all of them. That doesn't mean we're going to agree on every issue, but I was able to call on them from time to time and say, hey, we got to do this. This is the right thing to do. There's a number of issues that we passed that I firmly believe only resulted because they trusted the direction that I was trying to take the state, and they thought this is the right thing to do. But if you don't ever spend time with them and you don't ever act interested in what they're doing or their lives, they're just not going to respect you.
Today's conversation is brought to you in part by Farm Families of Mississippi, reminding us that every meal starts on a farm.
Mississippi farmers raise over 800,000 head of cattle each year. We take care of our livestock so you get what's good for your family on your table. We are only one of thousands, but we are united as one to grow the food, fiber, and shelter you need every day. Mississippi needs farmers. The Farm Families of Mississippi.
When it comes to choosing energy for your family and your home, make the smart choice with natural gas from Atmos Energy. It's efficient and reliable energy that's essential for today and generations to come. You can count on affordable natural gas to help you save money and keep you comfortable while fueling your dream home. So make the smart choice and talk to a builder today about including natural gas. Together, we're fueling our energy future. Atmos Energy, your natural gas company.
Is cooking your passion? Do you love to bake? Do you want to be a chef? You need to check out Culinary Arts at Holmes CC. When the affordable tuition you need meets the technical skills you want, That's when you know you're a Bulldog. A Holmes Community College Bulldog. Enroll today at holmescc.edu.
When it comes to concrete work in central Mississippi, trust a name built on generations of craftsmanship. Nico Concrete Contractor. Nico is a third-generation concrete professional with over 30 years of hands-on experience and more than 20 years in business right here in Brandon. From residential driveways and patios to commercial parking lots, metal building foundations and retaining walls. If you want it done right the first time, call Nico Concrete Contractor. Built on experience, built to last. Audibles continues with support from farm families of Mississippi, where agriculture meets everyday life.
I want to highlight a few of the items on, to me, a very impressive list of transformative legislation that passed during your time as Speaker of the House. House Bill 1510, that led to the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe versus Wade. The Mississippi Religious Freedom Restoration Act. You guys had the largest teacher pay raise in Mississippi history, nation-leading human trafficking legislation, and you made safe haven baby drop boxes more accessible to the public. You also led the charge to change the state flag of Mississippi. We're going to dive into that in a minute. That was a historical moment, to say the very least. I know you're proud of all those that we just highlighted. There's so many more to cover, but of those we mentioned, I know it's hard to rank them, but is there one that you would say, hey, that's number one for me?
House Bill 1510,
yeah,
I think has got to be at the top of the list.
Yeah.
That overturned Roe versus Wade. I told my caucus, y'all will never do anything bigger in your political lives than overturning Roe versus Wade. That made not only a national history, it made international history. And it all started in room 113 of the Mississippi State Capitol in the Republican caucus meeting. We are a very conservative state. We enjoy the benefits of living in a state where the overwhelming majority of people believe in the sanctity of human life. They believe that that child in the womb is a human being and is entitled, therefore, to certain protections under the law, one of which is not being murdered. We enjoy that here in Mississippi. There's an umbrella of a pro-life atmosphere here. So when we took over in 2012, we immediately set out to start passing laws. And I have to stop and give Andy Gibson, my chairman of Judd B at that time, tremendous credit, because he was one of the soldiers out front, leading that charge. We passed, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 different bills to protect the lives of the unborn. One said you can't perform an abortion after 20 weeks. One said if you're going to be a doctor performing abortions, you've got to have admitting privileges in Mississippi. One said you can't perform an abortion after a heartbeat is detected. Well, every time one of these bills comes to the floor, there's tremendous debate. You can imagine there's great emotion tied up into such a bill. The Democrats, particularly some of the Democrats, were adamantly opposed to it. It always resulted in a 2 or 3 hour debate on the floor. A lot of hurt feelings, a lot of political capital would be spent. And every time we'd pass one of those bills, they would be immediately struck down by the Fifth Circuit. The day we passed a bill, an injunction would be entered, it'd go into the federal court system, they would enter the injunction, stop the implementation of the bill, go to the Fifth Circuit would hold it up, and it'd just go nowhere. Well, after 3 or 4 times of doing that, you kind of get political fatigue. And so in 2018, Andy came to me and he said, I want to bring forward another one that says we're going to do a 15-week abortion ban. Well, some of my House members were growing tired of that. They were like, it's not going to go anywhere. The Supreme Court composition has not changed. They're still inclined to uphold Roe versus Wade. If we pass this law, they're just going to strike it down. We're going to spend a lot of political capital on the House floor. Hurt feelings are going to happen. It's just not worth it. We've already established that we are a pro-life state. We don't have to pass this bill again. Those are some of the attitudes toward why are we doing this again. But as I told Andy, I said, we got to keep fighting the good fight. We can't give up on this. The unborn, lives of the unborn are depending upon us, being their voice. And a verse of scripture came to mind, Galatians 6:9. It says, do not grow weary of doing good, because in due season we will reap if we do not give up. And I used that kind of as a motivation to encourage the caucus to say, we got to keep fighting the good fight. In due season, there will be a payoff if we do not give up. So we had that discussion in room 113 of the state capitol. All the caucus agreed to come on board and let's do this again. So we passed House Bill 1510. Sure enough, immediately struck down, immediately went to the Fifth Circuit. But little did we know that in 2022, the composition of the Supreme Court would change. Donald Trump was president. He named Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh and one other one I can't remember right now, all of whom were very much pro-life individuals. And the composition of the court changed. And they took House Bill 1510 up on appeal. A lot of people don't know this, but the Supreme Court doesn't have to take anything they don't want to take. It's not an automatic appeal to the Supreme Court. But they took it up on certiorari is what they call it. And sure enough, they overturned Roe versus Wade. And it is no longer the law of the land. Now, we have to be very clear here. They did not outlaw abortion with that. What they said was, we're going to let each state decide for themselves what their policy on abortion is. Now, in Mississippi, we had already passed a law back in 2008, I think it was, that said if Roe versus Wade is ever overturned, then abortion would be outlawed in Mississippi. So we already had that law in place, and as soon as Roe versus Wade was overturned, that law came into effect. We were ahead of the game on that. But that had national ramifications and international ramifications, and it all started right here in the Republican caucus of the Mississippi House back in 2018. So very proud of that accomplishment. If we did nothing else, that hopefully results in saving the lives of the unborn.
Such a big moment for you and your career and for the state of Mississippi. But also, you were, in 2015, you started leading this charge to change the state flag, and you were really within the minority in your own party. So why was it so important for you to start to lead that charge to get it changed?
Well, if those who were around way back in 2001 will remember, we had a vote on whether or not to adopt a new state flag. And I even voted back then to change the flag. I just felt like the flag had become an eyesore for us. A flag, to me, is something that it's a banner under which people unite. People fly Mississippi State flags, Ole Miss flags, Southern Miss flags, and they use that to identify themselves with their school. I am a graduate of this school. Here's my banner that professes that. Pirates have a flag. It's a skull and crossbones. It says we rape and pillage, but they at least unite under the flag. Our flag had been, I say, co-opted or hijacked by people who are using it to represent things that I don't think reflect well upon the state. Heck, when I grew up in Mississippi, I did not see it as a sign of offense. It didn't bother me. I think most people didn't see the Confederate battle flag as a sign of offense. But over the years, we see people who have taken it and held it up to represent the racism and the hatred that they have in their heart. And it's just been hijacked. Now, I'm no history expert, but you look at the swastika. I think if you do research or Google the swastika, you'll see that it was from like the 1400s that by the Chinese or the Aztecs or somebody that represented peace and enlightenment. Well, as I understand it, Hitler took the swastika and flipped it around and used it to represent the hatred that he had in his heart. Now, one of the people I talked to said they were not a racist, they just loved history. And my chief of staff at the time said, when is the last time you drove by a mobile home and saw a Confederate flag flying in the yard and thought to yourself, there lives a great historian? He said, you don't think that. You think that person is continuing to promote, a belief that doesn't represent who we are as a state. And that flag did not unite Mississippi. Our African-American brothers and sisters did not feel unity under that flag. So those are, and that's just not my opinion. You saw it with the Marine Corps took it down. Let me back up. So much of this resulted from different events that happened around the country whereby people were shooting doing shootings or doing racially motivated things and using the flag to represent that hatred. And it goes back to the swastika. Go fly a swastika in your yard today and tell people it represents peace and enlightenment. They're not going to believe you because it's been co-opted, hijacked to represent something else. I felt like that flag was moving us in that direction. And I wasn't the only one. The Marine Corps voted to take it down. NASCAR voted to take it down. The Southern Baptist Convention passed a resolution urging people to stop flying the Confederate battle flag. There were a number of organizations across the country. The NCAA said no more. The SEC said no more.
Support for Audibles comes from Atmos Energy, helping to fuel homes across the South with safe, reliable natural gas. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's me, Gus the Gopher for Atmos Energy. I dig all around the yard. Occasionally, I bump into a utility line and get a headache. But if you hit one with your shovel, backhoe, or ditch digger, you could cause a gas leak, disrupt service, or worse. So call 811 at least 3 business days before you or someone else digs in your yard to have those underground utility-owned lines marked. It's free and it's the law. You dig what I'm saying? For more on safe digging, visit atmosenergy.com/811.
From our view on this farm, food security is national security. Our nation must have a sustainable food source. Keeping the supply chain moving and food on our grocery store shelves by growing the cleanest food in the world.
We're only one of thousands, but we are united as one to grow the food, fiber, and shelter you need every day because Mississippi needs us. Mississippi needs farmers, the farm families of Mississippi.
Family owned and operated since 1986, Lakeside Molding has become the trusted source of architectural products throughout the South. They offer fine interior architectural moldings, custom millwork, and cabinet doors designed and handcrafted in Flowwood. Their showroom on Lakeland Drive is stocked with today's most sought-after interior details, including corbels, post, fireplace mantles, bath vanities, mirrors, and much more. Tim Shoemaker and his staff work closely to meet client needs for new construction, restoration, and remodeling projects. Lakeside Molding, where details make the difference.
Is cooking your passion? Do you love to bake? Do you want to be a chef? You need to check out Culinary Arts at Holmes CC. When the affordable tuition you need meets the technical skills you want, that's when you know you're a Bulldog. A Holmes Community College Bulldog. Enroll today at holmescc.edu.
Welcome back to Audibles, presented in part by Atmos Energy, natural gas, the smart energy choice for your home.
It just was moving in that direction. And then you had the shooting in Charleston, South Carolina, where the young man went in and killed 9 African Americans and then wrapped himself in the Confederate battle flag. And that day, South Carolina legislature voted to take it down. They had been flying it on the Capitol grounds, and they said, no more. We're not going to let that represent what we stand for. Well, that night, I was at an event, and I didn't know that had even happened, but a TV man stuck his microphone in my face and asked me what I thought about it, and I just said what I thought about it. I had no idea that it was going to start a revolution, so to speak, and I just said, I think it's time for us to it's a point of offense, and it's for many, and it doesn't help the image of our state, and I think we need to have a conversation about changing it. And that's what started. But it took 5 years for that because I think people were scared to get out front on that. They were scared to take a stand on it. And from a political standpoint, it probably was not a smart thing to do. But I've never held myself out as a great politician. I don't want to be known as a great politician. I just want to be known as a guy who operates on his convictions and does what he thinks is right. And that's what I did. My wife called me. I was coming home. It was in North Mississippi, and I was driving home that night. She said, "What have you done?" I said, "I don't know. What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, I've already received calls from CNN and Fox News and the Rachel Maddow show and CBS and all these other people. They call in the house wanting to know, why you're in favor of changing the flag." And it just kind of swept across the country that we were the last state to have that image on our flag. And every time something happened across the country that was racially motivated, we became the target of discussion with our flag. We're the only ones that still has this flag, this emblem on our flag. I just felt like we are a better state. My motivation was more spiritually motivated. I don't think it's consistent to read scripture and talk about the love of Christ and how Jesus loves you and then wear that flag on your t-shirt while you're trying to witness to somebody. I just felt like, for me, it was spiritually motivated. But for others, it was economically motivated. I talked to economic developers all around the state who said, it is an obstacle we have to overcome to attract jobs in industry. We're having a difficult time. People don't want to put us on the radar screen because of it. And I've got anecdotes I could tell that I won't for the sake of time, but real life stories of where these changing of the flag has opened the door for people to come to our state. They're now doing business with people, whereas before we were not being considered. So all those things was kind of what happened back in 2015. And then, it took 5 years before it was really the George Floyd incident in Minnesota, I think is where that happened, that put it back on the front burner again. And that 3 weeks between when he was killed and when we changed the flag, a lot of things happened to move us in that direction during that 3 weeks.
Despite all the reasons to change it, the good reasons that you've mentioned, you received a lot of backlash and even threats, text.
I did.
Email. And again, you're the minority in your own party. So you're kind of fighting the fight by yourself in a lot of ways. So was there ever a moment where you said, you know what, I got to abandon this thing just for the sake of, you had the Clinton Police Department looking out for your neighborhood and house and saying, hey, just keep a watch for me here.
Yeah, that night when I made that statement, I did receive quite a bit of ugly texts and emails and threats and whatnot. But I also got a tremendous outpouring of support as well. So there was much more, I'd say 3-1 in favor of what I had said versus against what I had said about changing the flag. But it only takes one, misguided person to do something not smart, and I just didn't know what was going to happen. So that night I did. That's the only night I've ever asked them to look out for me. I said, just drive by every 30 minutes, make sure everything's okay. So, and nothing ever happened. Nothing ever happened, and I'm grateful for that. I think the most affirming thing was the vote that took place in 2020 when we did take down the old flag and implement the new flag. We put it on the ballot for the people to vote. And I was hoping that we would get, 50%. Just we don't have to keep fighting this fight. And about 3 weeks out, I got a poll that said about 58% of the state supported the changing of the flag. And I thought, well, that's good, but that's not much of a buffer. And then about a week out, I got a poll that said 61% of the people supported changing the flag. And I thought, well, that's better. But the day of the vote, was 73 or 75% of the people of this state voted for the new flag. That was the most affirming thing of the entire ordeal, to say, yes, 3/4 of the people of this state are ready for a new image, a new flag, a new change. And today, it's just not even an issue anymore. Rarely do I have somebody who'll ask me about it. I think it has united our state. I think people are behind it. There are still some of those who are angry about it, but they're in the distinct minority. And the changing of the flag was a great uniting thing for us in this state.
So June 28th, 2020 is when the House passed the rhetorical bill to change the flag. I've heard there were lots of tears that day in the Capitol, a lot of applause. 126 years that flag had flown, and you were the one that led the charge to get it changed. Take me back to that moment for you. I know you like to deflect praise to the team and to the party and things like that, but take me back to that moment for you after the threats that we just talked, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot. It's really worthy of an episode in and of itself, all the things that you had to go through to get to June 28, 2020. But take me back to that moment for you.
Tremendous relief, tremendous sense of accomplishment. It's been a long time coming. It's been 5 years. It was almost 5 years to the day. On June 22nd, 2015 is when I made my statement that I felt like it was time for us to change the flag. June 28, 2020 is the day we did it. So it was almost 5 days almost to the day, other than, well, 5 days over. That's how long it had been. And so, for 5 years, there were continued questions to me about, from both sides, the media wouldn't let it go. When are you going to change the flag? When are you going to change the flag? And people who were not for the change were like, you better let that go. We need to let it go. So you're still in the turmoil during that 5-year period of time. You're getting it from both sides. I tell this to people all the time, anytime you operate on legislation, you got to have the votes. Everything we do operates on votes. Mm-hmm. I don't care how great and grand and wonderful your idea is. If you ain't got the votes to do it, it ain't going anywhere. We can't pass Mother's Day without 62 votes. That's a wonderful idea. Everybody's for Mother's Day, but if I don't have 62 votes in favor of Mother's Day, we're not going to pass Mother's Day. So to change the flag, you had to have 62 votes. But because of the point where we were in the session, the deadline for introducing a bill had already passed. Mm-hmm. Well, in order to allow for the introduction of a new bill, you have to suspend the rules. The rules say we can't introduce another bill. So that is a 2/3 vote. That's 81 votes in the House. So I just didn't need 62 votes. I needed 81 votes to even get the bill to the floor. I had 42 or 3 Democrats. And a week out, I think I had 12 Republicans who had agreed to vote with me to change the flag. That totals about 56. I think I had 56 votes. Well, we were 6 votes shy of changing the flag, but we were almost 30 votes shy, 25 votes shy of even having the opportunity to bring a bill to the floor. So I began, talking to my members, and I said, I need your vote on 2 things. I need you to vote to suspend the rules so that we can introduce a bill, and then I need for you to vote for the bill. And so many of them just said, I can't do that. It's just political suicide. My people are not for this. It's going to be tough. And they just didn't have the courage to do it. But over that last week, hearts began to change, and I credit it all to God. People say that I did it. Hey, the speaker can turn a few votes, but he can't turn 36. I had 12 votes, 12 Republicans a week out. The day of the vote, I had 48. So 36 men changed their minds from the no column to the yes column. Wow. In a week's time. Only God could do something like that. Only God could change that many hearts. And people say, well, what made the difference? What caused them? Were they scared about losing sporting events? The NCAA said they wasn't going to host anything in Mississippi. Was it the Baptist Convention, the Presbyterians, or was it, the college presidents who came and called for it? What was the moment, the triggering event that caused these guys to change their hearts? And I say it's their wives and children, because I can tell you a number of anecdotes of men who changed their hearts.
From the seed, and the soil grows row after row. We take care of this land, using just the right amount of our natural resources and never more than we need.
We are only one of thousands, but we are united as one to grow the food, fiber, and shelter you need every day. Because Mississippi needs us. Mississippi needs farmers, the farm families of Mississippi.
When it comes to choosing energy for your family and your home, make the smart choice with natural gas from Atmos Energy. It's efficient and reliable energy that's essential for today and generations to come. You can count on affordable natural gas to help you save money and keep you comfortable while fueling your dream home. So make the smart choice and talk to a builder today about including natural gas. Together, we're fueling our energy future. Atmos Energy, your natural gas company.
When it comes to concrete work in central Mississippi, trust a name built on generations of craftsmanship. Nico Concrete Contractor. Nico is a third-generation concrete professional with over 30 years of hands-on experience and more than 20 years in business right here in Brandon. From residential driveways and patios to commercial parking lots, metal building foundations and retaining walls. If you want it done right the first time, call Nico Concrete Contractor Built on experience, built to last.
Carl Oliver is a representative from the Winona area. Carl called Jason White on a Saturday before we voted, 7 days out. He said, "How are you voting?" And Jason said, "I'm voting to change the flag." And Carl said, "I'll call you back." And he hung up. 30 minutes later, he called Jason back. He said, "I've been talking to my wife and my daughters." And he said, "I will not always be a legislator, but I will forever be a father and a grandfather."
Wow.
I cannot disappoint and embarrass my children. I'm voting to change the flag. That is inspirational.
That's
right
powerful.
there. Joey Hood from Ackerman, he comes into my office. He starts crying. I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "I got two little sons. They're 9 and 10 years old, and they're watching me. They're watching my example, and I cannot let them down.
Wow.
I'm voting to change the flag." Steve Massengill from Hickory Flat, way up on the Tennessee line, came in, started crying. He said, "My 19-year-old son is begging me to change the flag." Manley Barton, who's now the pro tem, he's from Pascagoula area. Manley said, "I can't do it. My people are not for it. I'm not going to do this." That was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. At 7 o'clock that night, we went to dinner together. He said, "I want to talk to you before we go into dinner." I said, "Okay." He said, "I called my wife and I talked to her about all this, and she said, are you going to be able to look at your face in the mirror the day after this vote and be proud of what you've done?"
Whoa.
And he said, "I know the answer to that question. I'm just scared." But he said, "I'm going to not only vote to suspend the rules, I'm going to vote to change the flag too." I mean, Brent Anderson from Bay St. Louis told me, "No, I can't do that." He was a 6-month freshman. He'd been in the legislature 6 months. This is the first tough vote he had. He said, I can't do this." But then he came back later and he said, "I've been thinking about it. It's the right thing to do." So not only did he vote to change the flag, he brought his wife and kids up there to watch him punch the button. He wanted his kids to remember the day their daddy voted to change the state flag. Wow. And I got 36 stories like that I could tell of people. Donnie Bell, Donnie Scoggin, Jim Beckett, Richard Bennett, Casey Ure. These are all state legislators. And if I had my list, I could tell you a story behind every one of them. But they come into my office and say, "I thought about it over the night, and this is the most important vote I'll make. If it beats me, it beats me, but it's the right thing to do." So when people say, "Who changed the flag?" I say, it's the wives and the children of the members. They weren't moved by the coaches and the NCAA and NASCAR and the Marine Corps and all those other groups that supported this. What moved them from the no column to the yes column was their wives and children. And now, I hope this new flag lasts for another 126 years. But it unifies our state, gives us a great new image, and it was done by people who voted, who had to struggle with what's political and what's right. And they came down on the side of what's right. And that's the kind of people we want to elect to represent us in Washington and in Jackson. People who are going to vote what's right, not what's political. We're tired of people who vote too much political stuff.
You decided at the end of your term in 2023 to retire as Speaker of the House. Why did you feel like now was the perfect time to step away from that role? Why did you feel like now is a good time to do that?
Well, I've been the Speaker for 12 years. At the time I retired, I was the longest serving Speaker in the country. So that gives you a sense of the lifespan of a Speaker. Mm-hmm. I just felt like it was time to maybe take a step away and reevaluate, and probably just a good, the legislature, the House particularly, was in a good spot. I was very proud. You mentioned some of the accomplishments. we're in the best financial shape we've ever been in as a state. The budget is balanced. We're spending our money wisely. We're not overspending. We've accomplished the Roe versus Wade and changing the flag. Human trafficking is another thing that we led the charge on. The bill we passed in Mississippi is being used as a national model. It was just a good point to relish in the accomplishments, but also let some fresh ideas, come in, and also give me time to take a break and reflect. And it's not to say I won't get back in the game. I may, if the Lord opens the door for me to run for further office, I'll certainly welcome that. But I think it's just a good time for me to turn it over to some of the ones. I feel very proud of the condition of the House right now. Highest number of Republicans ever. It was able to help us get to that point. Conservative policies, conservative ideas. We've turned the attitude of the legislature into a new direction, and I'm proud of that fact.
I joked with you before the interview, when you get ready to run for governor, remember the little people, right?
Well, thank you. You're very kind. I'm flattered
remember the
by
little
that.
people, right?
I appreciate that.
So what message do you have for Mississippians who they might feel disconnected from the political spectrum? They might feel disillusioned just with the process of government, period. What would be your message to them?
Well, I think that is a true statement. I think most people don't pay attention to what's going on in Washington or Jackson. If it doesn't affect them, they just leave it alone. And I tell people all the time, you don't have to be politically astute. You don't have to understand everything, but you need to be politically aware. The people in Jackson, the people in Washington are making the rules. And if they make the rules you don't like, you're going to be bound by them. Mm-hmm. So I think it's particularly in today's time when social media and the access to information is so great, there's no reason why someone can't just hit a button on their computer or their phone and figure out what's going on in Jackson. What are the bills they discussing? Am I for that or against that? And notify their representative or their state senator or their congressman that I'm for this or I'm not for this. Those people are there to represent you. So I just encourage people to be politically aware. Sometimes politics are frustrating and they're boring and the process is complicated and people just check out. But pay attention to what your legislator is doing and make sure they're representing your interests.
My final question for you. If mom and dad, little sister, they could see everything that you've accomplished in your life and you could have a conversation with them right now, what would that conversation entail?
Well, I hope they'd say they were proud of me.
Yeah.
I hope they would see that I overcame a lot, that tragedy, that see the grace of God play out in my life. I hope they would say that we see that the Lord had his hand upon you. Mm-hmm. The Lord saved you from that wreck. The Lord continued to use you in this life, and I hope they would be proud of what we've been able to accomplish since they died.
Your story, the reason I wanted to have you on the show was hearing that story. That's one main reason, and one of the boxes we check off for this show is it inspiring? Is it interesting? Is it informative? You check all three of those boxes, and what you've been able to accomplish despite all odds, early in life being dealt a hand like that, and then to lead some of the most, and author some of the most historical pieces of legislation that this state will ever know. It is a remarkable story, and one that a long time ago, this is actually when you were still Speaker of the House, I said, I've got to see if I can ever get Philip Gunn on the show. I don't know that he'll ever give me a snowball's chance, but I'm going to ask if he'll be on the show. And a shout out to my cousin, Tony Geiger, for kind of helping some of this process along. And thank you for being raw and real with us. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm very honored that you would have me, very honored for your comments, very grateful that you allowed me to come on the show. And again, I just have to credit God and credit my faith, the way that he has been able to stay by my side and use me is very humbling to me, and I have to give him all the credit for that. So thank you.
I hope we'll get to do part 2 when you decide to come back to politics.
Okay, well, good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I appreciate it, Mr. Gunn. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you very much.
Your back's going to be killing you going back to the Delta, right?
Where in the Delta are you from? Cleveland. All right. I like Cleveland.
We'll do part 2 and let our next governor go home. I'm going to keep saying that. He's not going to return my text anymore.
Real stories, real legends. The South's own storytelling show. Join us next week for another episode of Audibles with Jason Scarborough.